The Café of Memories. The morning sun spilled through the tall glass windows of a small cafe nestled in the corner of a quiet street. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and freshly baked pastries, the kind of scent that made strangers feel at home even before their first sip. Jennifer sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of cappuccino, watching the city wake up. The cafe was peaceful, filled with soft chatter and the rhythmic sound of spoons stirring in ceramic cups. But for Jennifer, the calm outside didn't match the storm within. She was lost in her own thoughts, staring through the glass but seeing something far beyond the busy street. She was thinking about the life she once dreamed of, the life that somehow slipped away 10 years ago. She was a young woman full of light, laughter, and big dreams. Back then, she believed love could fix everything, and she had someone, the someone who made her believe that. His name was Ethan. They met during college, both working late nights in the library, helping each other study for exams they could barely stay awake through. He wasn't rich then, not even close, but he had ambition, that quiet fire in his eyes that made her feel safe. They shared everything, stories, laughter, plans for the future. But life had its cruel way of testing hearts. Ethan got a job offer overseas, a chance to chase the success he always dreamed about. Jennifer wanted him to take it, but deep down she feared what distance would do to them. And when he left, the silence that followed grew too wide to cross. Calls became rare, promises faded, and soon there was nothing left but a memory. Now, 10 years later, Jennifer's life was simple but heavy. She worked as a baker's assistant at a small bakery next door to this cafe, kneading dough before sunrise, serving cakes she could never afford herself. Life had humbled her, softened her spirit, but never broke her completely. She still smiled for others, even when her heart felt empty. Sometimes, on her lunch breaks, she came to this cafe to watch people, couples laughing, businessmen rushing, students dreaming, because in their stories, she found echoes of her own past. It was her small escape, her quiet world of what if. That morning, as she lifted her cup to take another sip, she noticed something. A tall man had just entered the cafe. The bell above the door rang softly, and every sound seemed to fade for a moment. He was dressed in a dark, tailored suit that looked effortless, expensive, and yet there was something familiar about the way he carried himself. Calm, confident, but with a gentleness in his eyes that time couldn't erase. He ordered his coffee, his voice low and polite, and as he turned slightly, Jennifer's heart skipped a beat. She froze. The cup trembled in her hands. It couldn't be. After all these years, after all that silence, it was him, Ethan. Her pulse quickened as she watched him from across the room. He hadn't seen her yet, or maybe he didn't recognize her. He looked different now, older, stronger, with the kind of poise that only success and struggle could shape. His hair was neatly styled, his wrist carried an elegant watch, and the cafe manager greeted him with surprising respect, as if he was someone important. But his eyes, those same deep brown eyes, they hadn't changed. They were the eyes she once fell in love with. Jennifer felt 1,000 thoughts rush through her mind at once. Should she hide? Should she go say hello? Would he even remember her? Her heart fought her logic, reminding her of all the nights she cried when his letters stopped coming, when his promises faded into silence. But there was also curiosity, the ache of wanting to know what became of him, whether he still thought about her too. Before she could decide, Ethan's gaze wandered, and it found hers. For a brief second, time stopped. The sound of the cafe vanished. It was just two souls meeting again after a lifetime of distance. His eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across his face before soft recognition settled in. He set down his coffee and walked toward her. Jennifer's hands tightened around the cup. Her breath caught. He stopped by her table, his lips curving into a faint smile that carried a mix of nostalgia and warmth. "Jennifer," he said softly, his voice deeper, steadier than she remembered. She nodded slowly, unable to find her words. "Ethan, it's been a long time," he interrupted gently, his smile carrying a touch of sadness. 10 years, she whispered, almost afraid of her own voice. He nodded, pulling out the chair opposite hers. "May I?" She hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded again. The man she once loved sat before her, and for a moment the years between them melted away. But something about him felt different. Not just his appearance or the quiet confidence he carried, but an aura of authority, of success. His suit wasn't just elegant. It was the kind worn by people who made decisions, people who built things, people who changed lives. And when the cafe manager walked over again to refill his cup, she overheard the words that made her heart jolt. "It's an honor having you here again. Mr. Grayson, congratulations on the new company branch." Jennifer blinked, confusion swirling in her chest. "Mr. Grayson, company branch." Ethan smiled politely at the manager and nodded, but Jennifer could only stare, her heart racing. When the manager walked away, she leaned forward slightly, her voice trembling. "Ethan, you own the company?" He looked at her for a long moment, then gave a humble smile. "It's been a long journey. I built it from scratch after moving abroad. I never thought it would grow this big." Her eyes widened slightly, her chest tightening with mixed emotions. Pride, disbelief, and something she couldn't name. "You're a billionaire now?" she asked softly, her tone a mix of awe and distance. He chuckled lightly. Titles never mattered much. Success came, but it didn't come without loss. His gaze met hers again, steady and gentle. "I lost you, Jennifer, and that was something no amount of money ever replaced." Those words struck her deeper than anything she'd heard in years. The cafe seemed smaller suddenly, the air heavier with emotions neither of them expected to face today. Jennifer lowered her eyes, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. She wanted to speak, to ask him why he never came back, why he never called again. But something in his voice, the sincerity, the quiet pain, told her there was more to the story than she ever knew. Before she could ask, he continued. "When I left, I thought I was chasing a dream for both of us. I wanted to come back when I had something to offer, a home, stability, a future. But things got complicated. I made mistakes. And when I tried to find you again, it was too late." "You'd moved?" Jennifer looked up, eyes shimmering with emotion. "Life moved me, Ethan, not choice." Their silence carried the weight of everything left unsaid. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that inside this small cafe, two souls were quietly rewriting their past. Ethan finally smiled again, softer this time. "You still love coffee the same way?" he said, nodding toward her cup. She laughed lightly, a sound that surprised even her. "And you still talk like a poet," he smiled. "Some habits never die." For the first time in years, Jennifer felt something in her heart flicker, a fragile, uncertain warmth that felt dangerously close to hope. She didn't know what the future held or why fate brought him back now, but one thing was certain. This meeting wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of something unfinished, finding its way home again. The weight of unspoken years. For a long moment after Ethan's words faded into the soft hum of the cafe, silence lingered between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with the weight of everything that had been left unsaid for a decade. Jennifer's heart felt like it was caught between the past and the present, between the girl she once was and the woman she had become. She looked at Ethan across the table and saw traces of the young man she had loved, hidden beneath layers of time and experience. His eyes still carried that quiet determination, but now there was something else, a sadness he couldn't quite hide, a tiredness that came from years of carrying the world alone. The sound of clinking cups and quiet conversation surrounded them. But for Jennifer, the cafe had dissolved into a haze of memory. Her mind drifted back to the last night they spoke, the night before he left for his new job overseas. She remembered standing under a street lamp as rain fell around them, her heart torn between love and fear. He had promised to come back, to write, to never forget her. But weeks turned into months and months turned into years. His voice faded from her life like an echo lost in a storm. She had waited for him longer than she admitted to anyone, even to herself. Now, seeing him here again, successful beyond imagination, stirred something deep within her. But beneath the surprise and the ache of nostalgia, there was also anger, quiet, buried but real. She had suffered in his absence, learned to build her strength out of heartbreak. She had no idea whether she wanted to forgive him or simply understand what had truly happened. Ethan broke the silence first, his tone soft but deliberate. "Jennifer," he began, his gaze steady, "I owe you an explanation. You deserve that much." He leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and resolve. "When I left, I thought I was making the right choice. The company that offered me a position promised mentorship and a future. I told myself it would only be for a few years. I would build something, save enough, and come back for you. But life isn't that simple. The job was harder than I imagined. The company went through chaos, and I found myself trapped in a place that valued greed more than people. I worked 18 hours a day just to survive. I was young and foolish, and I thought success would heal the distance between us. Instead, it destroyed me." Jennifer listened quietly, her expression unreadable, though her fingers tightened around her cup. He paused, searching for the right words. "There were months when I wanted to call you, to hear your voice," he continued. "But when I finally had the courage, I found out you'd moved. Your number changed. Your address was gone. I thought maybe you'd moved on." Her voice came softly, trembling. "I didn't move on, Ethan. Life moved me. I lost my apartment after my father passed. I couldn't afford to stay in the same city. I took the first job I could find in a bakery here, and I kept hoping one day I'd walk down the street and see you again." Her words cracked something in him. He reached for her hand, hesitating before his fingers brushed hers gently, like testing if time would allow it. "If I had known," he whispered, "I would have turned the world upside down to find you." Jennifer's eyes met his, full of mixed emotion. The old tenderness still flickering, but shadowed by caution. "You built an empire, Ethan," she said quietly. "You found success most people only dream about. You became everything you said you wanted to be. Why would you look back?" His expression softened. "Because I never built it for me," he replied. "I built it for the life we dreamed of. Every late night, every deal, every sleepless week, I told myself I was building something I could come home to. But when I finally looked around, I realized I had no home left to return to. Money filled the spaces where meaning used to be. I owned everything, except the part of me that mattered." Those words silenced her completely. For a moment, all she could do was look at him. This man who once held her heart, now confessing that success had cost him everything but regret. The people around them came and went, unaware that two lives were quietly rewriting their history in the corner of a small cafe. After a long pause, she spoke again, her voice steadier this time. "Ethan, people change. Maybe we can't go back. Maybe we're not the same two people anymore." He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. "You're right. We've both changed. But I didn't come here to take back the past. I came here because I finally built something worth sharing, something honest. I opened a foundation this year, Jennifer. We help small businesses owned by women, people with dreams but no means. And when I saw your bakery earlier today, the one with your name on the signboard, I realized it was you. I came in here hoping I'd see you just once." Her heart trembled at his words. She looked out the window at the small sign across the street that read, "Jennifer's Bakes and Bloom." It was a tiny bakery she helped manage for her employer, a modest place with peeling paint and an old oven that barely worked. She never imagined it would draw his attention, let alone his admiration. "You noticed the bakery?" she asked quietly. He smiled faintly. "How could I not? It reminded me of you. You always said baking was your way of giving happiness to others. I still remember the first cake you ever made for me. That uneven chocolate thing with strawberries that somehow tasted perfect." She laughed softly despite herself, the memory warming her heart. "It was terrible. The frosting melted before I could finish it. But it was made with love," he said gently, his eyes softening. "That's something you never lost." Jennifer looked down, trying to hide the faint color rising to her cheeks. "Love doesn't pay rent, Ethan," she murmured. "It just makes the struggle feel less heavy." He hesitated for a moment, then leaned closer. "Then maybe it's time someone made sure you never have to struggle like that again." Her eyes flicked up to meet his. What do you mean? He exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that comes before a leap of faith. I want to invest in your bakery, properly. I want you to have your own place, your own business. I don't want to give you charity. I want to give you a chance. You always gave me belief when I had nothing. Let me return it now. The words hit her harder than she expected. She wasn't sure whether to feel grateful or offended. Part of her heart swelled with the idea of being seen, recognized and supported. But another part of her, the one that had learned to survive alone, recoiled at the thought of accepting help from the man who once left her behind. Ethan, she said quietly, I've spent years building myself up again. I can't just accept something like that out of guilt. His voice softened even further. It's not guilt, Jennifer. It's gratitude. It's unfinished love. And maybe I don't deserve your forgiveness yet, but I can start by doing one thing right. The silence that followed was fragile, like the quiet before a storm of memories and decisions. Jennifer didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, her reflection faintly overlaying the city lights beginning to shimmer outside. She could see the version of herself that once believed love was simple, and the version of herself now, wiser, scarred, but still full of heart. Ethan stood slowly, placing his business card on the table. You don't have to decide now, he said quietly. I'll be in town for a few weeks. The card has my personal number. If you ever want to talk or even just share a cup of coffee again, call me. He paused before walking away, his voice barely above a whisper. And Jennifer, it's good to see you again. You look just as I remembered. She didn't move until the door closed behind him. The bell chimed softly, and the faint sound of rain began tapping against the window. She reached for the card on the table, his name embossed in gold, elegant yet simple. Ethan Grayson, founder and CEO, Grayson Industries. Her fingers trembled as she held it. Her mind was a storm of questions, emotions, and the faint, dangerous spark of something she thought she'd buried forever. Hope. She didn't know if she was ready to let him back into her life. But as she stared at that card, one truth became clear. Fate wasn't done with them yet. Outside, the rain grew heavier, blurring the world into soft grey lines. Jennifer sat there for a long time, lost between past love and present choices, unaware that the next decision she made would change everything, not just for her, but for Ethan as well. The call that changed everything. The night after their encounter at the cafe was long and sleepless for Jennifer. Rain had softened the city into a dreamlike silence, yet her thoughts were louder than ever, swirling in relentless circles. She sat by her small apartment window, staring at the city lights that blinked like scattered memories in the distance. On the table beside her, Ethan's business card rested quietly. Simple, white, elegant, carrying a weight far heavier than its size. His name shimmered faintly under the lamplight, and every time she looked at it, her heart tightened a little more. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a door she wasn't sure she was ready to open again. She poured herself a cup of tea and tried to convince herself that their meeting meant nothing, that it was just coincidence, a passing echo from a life she had already moved on from. But no matter how much she tried to silence it, a part of her kept whispering that fate didn't make mistakes like this. Seeing him again had stirred something she thought had died. That old sense of comfort, that warmth of belonging that had once defined her world. Yet there was also fear, the kind that grows from old wounds and broken promises. Could she really trust him again? Could she even trust herself not to fall back into the past? The rain outside turned to a steady drizzle, and she found herself tracing her fingers over the embossed letters of his name. Ethan Grayson. It sounded foreign now, so much grander, so much more distant than the Ethan she once knew. But she remembered the way he had looked at her in the cafe, the softness in his eyes, the quiet apology in his tone. That wasn't the look of a stranger. That was the look of a man carrying ghosts of love he never buried. By midnight, the city was asleep, but Jennifer was not. The ticking of the clock seemed to grow louder with every passing second, until finally she picked up her phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she entered the number from the card. For a long moment, she hovered over the call button, her breath shallow, her heart racing. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she pressed it. The phone rang only once before his voice came through, calm, warm, and unmistakably familiar. "Jennifer?" For a moment she couldn't speak. The sound of his voice, deeper now but still gentle, washed over her like a memory she'd been afraid to touch. "It's me," she finally said softly, almost in a whisper. "I didn't mean to call this late." There was a faint smile in his voice. "You could have called at 3 in the morning and I'd still pick up." She hesitated, unsure how to respond. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I," he admitted. "I kept thinking about you, about everything I didn't say today." A silence settled between them, not awkward, but fragile and full. Jennifer closed her eyes, listening to the rhythm of his breathing on the other end. It felt like being pulled backward through time, to those long nights in college when they'd talk for hours about everything and nothing at all. Finally, she broke the silence. "You said you wanted to show me something," she said quietly. "Your foundation, the work you're doing. I'd like to see it." There was a pause, and she could almost hear his relief through the phone. "Tomorrow," he said softly. "Come to Grayson Tower around noon. I'll be waiting for you in the lobby." When the call ended, Jennifer sat there for a long time, staring at her phone. Something inside her shifted, not quite peace, but a sense of direction she hadn't felt in years. She didn't know where this path would lead, but she knew she had to take it. The next morning dawned grey and misty, the kind of morning that made the world feel softer, quieter. Jennifer dressed carefully, not extravagantly, just a simple blue dress and a beige coat. She tied her hair back, slipped on her old watch, and took a long breath before stepping out. As she rode the subway toward the heart of the city, her heart beat faster with every stop. She'd passed by Grayson Tower before, that massive glass building that seemed to touch the clouds. But she had never imagined walking through its doors. When she arrived, the building loomed before her like a monument of ambition and time. The glass facade reflected the cloudy sky, while people in suits hurried in and out through tall, revolving doors. She hesitated for a moment, clutching her purse, feeling suddenly small. But then she remembered Ethan's words. "You always gave me belief when I had nothing." She straightened her shoulders and walked inside. The lobby was a world of elegance, polished marble floors, soft lighting, a grand staircase winding upward. A receptionist greeted her with a professional smile. "Good morning, ma'am. May I help you?" "I'm here to see Mr. Ethan Grayson," Jennifer said, her voice calm though her pulse was racing. The receptionist checked her list, then nodded quickly. "Of course, Ms. Lane, Mr. Grayson is expecting you. Please take the elevator to the 30th floor." As the elevator doors closed, Jennifer watched the numbers climb. 10, 15, 20. Her reflection flickering faintly in the mirrored wall. By the time it reached 30, her palms were slightly damp. The doors opened to a quiet hallway lined with artwork and large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. Ethan was waiting at the end of the hall. He looked different in the daylight, less like a billionaire and more like the boy she once knew, though time had added a quiet strength to him. When he saw her, his smile was genuine, not the practiced kind of smile people wear for cameras. "You came," he said simply, his voice filled with warmth. "I said I would," she replied. Matching his tone, he gestured for her to follow. "Come. There's something I want you to see." He led her through a series of glass doors into a large open space filled with soft chatter and the hum of computers. It wasn't an office in the usual sense. It looked more like a creative hub. Dozens of young people were working on projects, their desks covered with sketches, reports, and screens displaying business plans. "This is the Grayson Foundation," Ethan explained. "We help small entrepreneurs, mostly women, start their own businesses. Bakers, designers, teachers, people who just need someone to believe in them." Jennifer walked slowly through the space, watching the people work. There was laughter here, energy, hope, the kind of warmth that couldn't be faked. Her chest tightened slightly. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "You did this?" He nodded. With a lot of help, I learned that success only means something when you can share it. Everything I built, it started because of you. You once told me that real success isn't about having everything, but about lifting others with you. I never forgot that. She turned to him, her eyes shimmering slightly. You remembered that? Every word, he said softly. It kept me human when the world around me stopped being kind. There was something about the way he said it that made her heart ache. For all his wealth, there was still a part of Ethan that looked lonely. A man who had conquered the world, but lost the one person who made it feel worth it. As they stood there, surrounded by people working toward their dreams, Jennifer realized something she hadn't before. Ethan wasn't here to impress her. He wasn't showing her his success to win her back. He was showing her what he had become, hoping she'd see that the man standing before her wasn't the boy who left, but someone who had learned what truly mattered. Ethan, she said quietly. I don't know what to say. He smiled faintly. Say you'll think about letting me help with your bakery, or at least let me take you to dinner tonight. I'd like to talk, not about the past, but about where we go from here. Her first instinct was to say no, to protect herself, to keep the distance safe. But looking into his eyes, she saw no pretense, no arrogance, only the same sincerity she once trusted without question. And maybe, just maybe, she was tired of running from what her heart still remembered. All right, she said softly after a long pause. Dinner. Ethan's smile widened slightly, not triumphant but grateful. I'll pick you up at 7. As she stepped into the elevator again, watching the doors close, Jennifer felt her heart beating faster than it had in years. She wasn't sure what she was walking toward, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like fear. It felt like the beginning of something she had lost long ago. Not just love, but the courage to believe in it again. Outside, the city was brightening. The rain had stopped, the clouds had begun to break, and sunlight touched the tops of the buildings. It felt symbolic, like a quiet promise that even after years of distance and silence, some hearts still knew how to find their way back home. The Billionaire's secret gift days turned into weeks after that life-changing meeting, and Jennifer found herself thinking about Alexander more often than she admitted to anyone. She had returned to her small apartment, still working double shifts to make ends meet, but her spirit felt lighter. The bakery was slowly improving after Alexander's quiet assistance, though he had never once spoken of it to her directly. He had simply said he wanted to help a friend. Yet Jennifer knew it wasn't charity. The way he looked at her, the way he made sure the repairs were done overnight so customers would see the place bright and welcoming again, it spoke of something deeper. She had spent nights sitting by the window with a cup of tea, staring at the glittering city skyline and wondering if he ever looked up at the same stars. Remembering the girl who once baked bread just to keep her dreams alive. One rainy evening, she was closing the bakery when a delivery truck stopped outside. A man in a neat uniform stepped out and handed her a sealed envelope. Confused, she signed for it and tore it open. Inside was a single key and a short handwritten note. For your next chapter, you believed in light when I was lost. Now it's time the world sees yours. The note wasn't signed, but she didn't need to read the name. Her hands trembled as she held the key, realizing it was to a new location. A larger bakery in the heart of the business district, fully furnished and ready to open. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to call him, to thank him, but when she searched for his number, it wasn't in her phone anymore. It was as if he had vanished into the rain, leaving behind only the gift of a future. The next morning she visited the new space, and when she stepped inside, her breath caught. It was beautiful, warm lights, polished counters, shelves filled with ingredients she could never afford before. On the wall hung a framed picture of a sunrise over the ocean with a single quote beneath it. Dreams don't die when hearts remember. She sank to her knees and cried, not out of sadness but overwhelming gratitude. The memory of their past, once painful, had become the reason her world was changing. Alexander had rebuilt more than her bakery. He had restored her faith in kindness. When she opened her new cafe to the public, people lined up around the block. Her story spread across the city. A single mother who never gave up, whose perseverance had inspired even a billionaire. Yet Jennifer never took full credit. She told every customer that the real success belonged to everyone who had once been broken and still dared to begin again. The day of the grand opening, as the cameras flashed and customers congratulated her, she glanced out the window and thought she saw a familiar figure across the street, tall, poised with the same quiet strength. But before she could step outside, the man disappeared into the crowd. That night, after closing, she found another note under the register. I promised myself I'd never interfere again, but seeing you smile is worth every boundary broken. Keep shining, Jen. Always A. She pressed the paper to her chest, whispering his name as the lights dimmed around her. Somewhere out there, the man who once walked away had returned, not to claim her, but to lift her back into the world she deserved. And in that moment she finally understood. Love didn't always need to end with togetherness. Sometimes it ended with freedom and a heart strong enough to start again. When hearts find home again. The months that followed were like a sunrise slowly spreading over Jennifer's life. Her new cafe, Morning Grace, became a symbol of hope for everyone who had once been overlooked, forgotten, or broken. People came not just for the pastries but for the story behind them. The woman who never gave up, the quiet billionaire who believed in her, and the friendship that changed both their lives. Every day, Jennifer woke before dawn, tying her apron with the same love she had poured into the small bakery that started it all. She no longer saw her past as a chain of failures, but as the soil from which her courage had grown. Still, when the crowd left and the soft glow of evening filled the cafe, her eyes sometimes wandered toward the door. Half expecting him to walk in, Alexander, meanwhile, had been living a different kind of silence. He traveled from city to city, overseeing projects, speaking at conferences, investing in causes he once ignored. Yet every success felt incomplete, every applause hollow, because no matter how far he went, a piece of his heart remained behind a glass counter where the scent of cinnamon and hope still lingered. He often passed by her cafe from afar, hidden beneath a cap or inside a car, watching her greet customers with that same gentle smile. It reminded him of the life he could have had if not for ambition's blind chase. The empire he had built no longer felt like an achievement. It was a gilded cage that only grew emptier the higher he climbed. He missed the simplicity of those days, the laughter they shared over burnt cookies, and the way she looked at him like he was more than just a man with wealth. She had seen the boy who once dreamed of making something good in a world that wasn't always kind. One crisp autumn evening, fate decided to bring their paths together again. Jennifer was attending a charity gala, invited by one of her loyal customers who admired her story. She wore a simple navy blue dress, elegant yet unpretentious, and her hair was loosely tied, a few strands dancing around her face. The event was filled with influential people, leaders, artists, business icons. When she walked in, she felt slightly out of place until a familiar voice behind her said softly, "You still make blue look like morning sky." She froze, her heart skipping a beat. Turning around, she saw him standing there, Alexander, in a classic black suit, his eyes as deep and unreadable as ever. For a moment, time folded in on itself. The noise around them faded. All she could see was him, and all he could feel was the memory of every word they had never said. They talked for hours that night, not as the billionaire and the baker, but as two souls who had been on parallel roads too long. She told him about her cafe, the people she helped, and how her son had started college on a scholarship. He listened quietly, pride flickering in his expression. Then he told her about his mother's passing, the business challenges, and how he had begun building community centers in her honor. "I wanted to make something that lasts," he said. "Something more than buildings." She touched his hand gently and replied, "You already did, Alex. Sometimes what lasts isn't what we build with money. It's what we leave in people's hearts." As the night ended, he walked her to the car, just like he used to when they were young. Neither wanted to say goodbye, but both understood that their stories no longer needed to end in romance to be whole. Before she stepped into the car, Alexander handed her a small box. Inside was a golden pendant in the shape of a sunrise, the same design that hung above her cafe's door. "For all the mornings we never shared," he said softly, "and the ones still waiting for you." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "You've already given me enough light, Alex, more than you'll ever know." He smiled, a rare, unguarded smile, and for the first time in years the emptiness in his chest eased. She drove away, her pendant glimmering against her heart, while he stood beneath the city lights watching her fade into the night. There was no promise of forever, no dramatic farewell, only the quiet certainty that they had healed what life once broke. In the days that followed, Alexander's foundation partnered with her cafe to fund small businesses run by single mothers. They rarely saw each other, but their letters, always signed simply with initials, became the heartbeat of their friendship. Each word carried respect, gratitude, and the unspoken truth that love could evolve beyond possession. Years later, when Jennifer opened her third cafe branch, she hung a quote on the wall near the counter. "Real love never ends. It simply changes shape." Every customer who read it felt warmth, though none knew its origin. But for her and Alexander, those words were enough, a silent vow between two souls who had found peace, not in the fairy tale they once imagined, but in the life they had built from its ashes.